I'm sure you've all seen these Football Manager experiments where you give a non-league club £1 billion and see how far they go with it. And there is one flaw with that kind of experiment, and that is if you give a non-league club £1 billion in Football Manager, most of it tends to be taken out of the club by owners and taxes. They don't spend very much, and it doesn't really seem to have very much of an impact. So I figured we would need to find a way around it. And as usual in my experiments, we found 3 ways around it. We are giving one club £1 billion worth of sponsorships over the next 10 years. It will trickle in slowly, but £1 billion is still £1 billion. We're giving another club £1 billion worth of stadium and facilities, and we're giving a third club £1 billion worth of players. And let's see which one of those is the most effective. And these are the 3 clubs that we're giving the money to: AFC Fylde, Aldershot and Altrincham. Not just because they're alphabetically the first 3 in the Vanarama National League, but they also all have exactly the same reputation in Football Manager, which is quite important to making sure this experiment is as fair as it can possibly be. So starting off with AFC Fylde, I need to remember which club I've given what to. So they've definitely not had the players. AFC Fylde, I think they had the money. There's an easy way to check. It's not there. If we go in here, club details, go to finances. Yeah, okay. AFC Fylde are the one that got the money. So they're starting off with £100 million in the bank, £25 million transfer budget, £500,000 a week wage budget. So there is plenty of money there, but they also have a £900 million sponsorship deal that is going to be paid out to them over the course of the next 9 seasons. So effectively, they're getting another £100 million injection every year for 10 years to spend on what they want. My theory about spreading it out over 10 years rather than giving it to them all in one go is that it should theoretically encourage them to spend it. We'll see, I guess. So AFC Fylde got the money. Aldershot got the players. If we have a look at Aldershot's best 11, in fact, the easiest way to look is the players who've got transfers arranged, because I went onto the internet and Googled the most valuable players in world football, went to Transfer Market and basically took the most expensive players in world football, tried not to double up on positions too much to give them all a way to play at the same time. I didn't want to just give them 10 strikers, but according to the Transfer Market website, this is £1 billion worth of player. Kylian Mbappe, Federico Valverde, Pedri, Jude Bellingham, Erling Haaland, Bukayo Saka, Declan Rice and Josko Gvardiol is just over £1 billion worth of player. They haven't got them forever, but they also don't have to pay their Premier League salaries. They're going to get these 5 players for 5 seasons, at which point they're all scheduled to go back to the clubs that they're at the start of the save in real life. So they've got 5 years with £1 billion worth of talent. Is that enough for them to fly up the leagues and get to the point where they can be self-sufficient and then, maybe replace them at the end? So they've got £1 billion worth of player. And then the final one is Altrincham, who have got £1 billion worth of facilities. We've given them the biggest stadium in world football, a 150,000 all-seater stadium. We've also got it set up so they fill it. They are going to get attendances of 150,000. And then on top of that, we've given them perfect facilities: training, youth, junior coaching, youth recruitment. So they don't have any extra money. They're not boosted with any fancy players, but they will obviously get a lot of money in through having a massive stadium that they fill, and should get some good young players coming through from their excellent youth facilities. And then any players they sign will benefit from their excellent training facilities. So 3 different clubs being given £1 billion in 3 different ways. Let me know down in the comments section which one of those 3 options you think is likely to have the best future. Which one's going to work? Are any of them going to work? A lot of my experiments haven't worked lately. I really hope this one works. So if we have a look at how the first season has gone, as you would expect, Aldershot have won the league. I expected them to have the fastest start because obviously they're the ones who've been left with all the fantastic players. Obviously, they only have them for 5 years, so it's not going to be a forever boost. But I imagine they've absolutely ripped this league apart. I mean, if we have a look at Erling Haaland, 30 goals in 40 appearances. I actually expected him to perform a little better than that. 33 goals from Mbappe. They've got some decent players here. Love the fact that still some of the original players who were at the club at the start are still here and still getting some goals for them as well. But they have a lot of talent and have now made it to League Two, where presumably they'll be favourites for promotion again. There is an argument that they'll just rattle up through the leagues over their 5 years before their players all leave. And then it's just whether or not they benefit from doing that. Are they actually going to be able to bring in players who can then keep them wherever they end up? I'm not so sure they will. But if we have a look to see what happened to the other two, so AFC Filed, who had the money, have finished 4th. Did they spend the money? Not really. They didn't. They did not really spend the money. They've given this one guy, Kyron Gordon, they've decided to pay him 11 grand a week. He was already at the club. Have they still got money though, is the question. So they now have 182 million in the bank. They've got 113 million pounds of a transfer budget. So the money is coming in. They just need to spend it. This is why just giving non-league clubs money doesn't necessarily help them. We'll see how they get on this season. Now they don't have Aldershot in the way to smash them about all over the place. And then the other one was Accrington, who... No, it wasn't. It was Altrincham. Altrincham are the ones who have the stadium, aren't they? Yes, Altrincham are the ones who've had the stadium. So how much money has that stadium made them? They have got £46 million in the bank. So they also have a massive budget. Not as big as the budget that Filed have, but plenty big. And I would expect they'd also be bringing some decent young players through as well. So if we have a look at their potential ability players, you can see that they've got some very talented young players who've arrived. So they've got great youngsters and the ability to spend some money. Not that they've started spending it yet, but they do have the option of going and spending it. The media would put Altrincham second and Filed in a relegation battle. Please, for goodness sake, spend some money, you idiots. We've gone 2 more years, so Aldershot are just smashing through all of the leagues, as you would expect the team that they've got to do. They won League 2, they then won League 1, so they're now in the Championship for this coming season. They've got these players for 2 more years. They don't seem to be building very much around them, which is potentially going to be a problem. The rest of their squad don't really look like a championship quality squad. They've got 2 more years before all these players go away. How many of them have made it to be club legends? We have none of them. None of them have even... Oh, Erling Haaland is a club icon who, I mean, he is scoring fun. I only got 26 goals in League One last year. And Mbappe, Valverde, Bellingham and Pedri are all on the favoured personnel list. Interestingly, how much money are they generating by flying up through the leagues? They're putting some decent cash together as well. They've got £18 million in the bank. They're still not getting huge attendances, but they're going to get to the Premier League. The question is, will they manage to stay in the Premier League, or will the ones who've got money catch up? Let's find the others. So Filed, who had the money, have made it to League 2. Okay, so they finished 4th a second year in a row in the National League, but then did win the National League last season. They should have an enormous bank balance by this point. Not quite as enormous as you would think. They've made it up to 282 million. Does that mean they've been spending it, or does that mean they've been hit by taxes? Yeah. So taxes then. I mean, they've managed to keep some of it. Did I just see Chris Smalling is their captain? They're paying a player £105,000 a week. Jack Jenkins is on £105,000 a week. I'm sure I saw Chris. Oh, Chris Smalling's their manager, not their captain. Here's me thinking they'd signed Chris Smalling, but no, Chris Smalling is the manager. They are paying some serious salaries. It does look like they're not really signing anyone any good, potential-wise, and they do have a tiny squad. They should just go out and spend some money. Let's just check in on Altrincham as our third club. Altrincham have made it all the way to League One. Okay, this is interesting. So they finished second in the National League the following season and got promoted through the playoffs and then went on to win League Two. So they've made it all the way up to League One. So facilities at the moment seems to be better than cash. Their facilities have generated them over £100 million in cash. They're not really spending it. I mean, they've spent a little bit. They signed Tyrese Campbell for 2.8 million. He was their one big splurge, but obviously with their excellent facilities, as well as filling the stadium, they are also bringing through good young players, although Faustino Angerin is not one who's come through their own system. But these next batch are, but presumably they're also being forced into selling some of these as well. Although it doesn't look like that's the case. I guess Brentford have stolen one. So they are having to sell a lot of their youngsters. So they're generating cash that way as well. But they've made it to League One, where they are expected to finish mid-table. In League Two, Fylde are expected to win promotion. The Championship, Aldershot also expected to win promotion. So they are all very much on the up. Let's check in again in 2 more years, by which point Aldershot will be in the Premier League, but all their players will have left. And there is your confirmation. 5 years in, Aldershot are a Premier League team. Let's see how they've got on. In fact, they didn't go straight up. So that first season in the Championship, they finished third, 93 points, but lost out in the playoffs and then did win the Championship the following year. So they've not actually benefited from having their super team play for them in the Premier League. And they are all leaving today. As you can see, Erling Haaland joining Manchester City today. He has scored an absolute ton of goals for them. He's made it onto the legends list. They've also had Jude Bellingham make it onto the icons list after a pretty impressive career. Interestingly, 5 years at Aldershot in the lower leagues, hasn't scored as many goals as he scored for Real Madrid in real life in about 15 games. So that's interesting. And then Valverde has made it onto the favoured personnel list. He's going to be going back to Real Madrid as well. Kylian Mbappe didn't get a work permit. Oh, okay. He wouldn't have got a work permit for the coming season. I was going to say, Kylian Mbappe not getting a work permit, that's bonkers. Pedri, so it looks like the foreign ones have not got their work permits because they're not having contracts. Interesting to see Pedri scoring more goals consistently than Jude Bellingham. He's obviously playing ahead of him, and Declan Rice going back to Arsenal, or in fact hitting Arsenal for the first time because he never got to play for them in-game. Interesting, the ones that didn't make it into the Dream 11. So Bukayo Saka, for example, hasn't even made it onto the favoured personnel list, which is very interesting. He'll also be heading back to Arsenal, along with Josko Gvardiol. That's the system they've been playing. So a back three with Gvardiol in the middle, and then a defensive midfield four of Saka, Rice, Bellingham, Valverde. I mean, that'll do, won't it? That seems the midfield and then the attack. Oh, they are going to come straight back down because they are losing all of those players. Oh no, how much money have they got? Have they got enough to survive at this level? Not really. What have they been spending their money on? They've not, I mean, they spent 40 million that year. So they are investing the money. I suspect at this point, Aldershot are going to be coming straight back down. They haven't expanded the ground. They haven't improved their youth facilities. And they're about to lose all of their players. They are going to have their one season in the Premier League, but then they are just going to start tumbling back down again. Maybe £1 million of players wasn't that useful. I mean, if they stay there, then that's nonsense. And it was great. Fylde, who got the money, made it into League One, where they did finish third in League One last year, missing out in the playoffs. They've still got another 5 years of their money flowing in, so they're going to benefit for a little bit longer. They're capping out at about 300 million. It doesn't seem like it's possible for their balance to go beyond that. It's not that they're really spending it. They are starting to spend a little bit more, but they're not spending loads more. They are spending a lot on salaries, though. Liam Delap is a Fylde player on £135,000 a week. I mean, people like that are just going to have to be there for their entire career. It's going to be interesting to see what happens when the money runs out at Fylde. And then Altrincham, who were ahead of Fylde in the race, it looks like Fylde have caught them up. They've now had 3 years in League One and are pretty much a mid-table League One team. So looking ahead at this season to come, Fylde with the money expected to finish 6th, and then Altrincham with the facilities looking at a 3rd place finish. Presumably Aldershot are expected to come straight back down again. At the moment, they're predicted mid-table. I suspect if we go forward a day, that prediction might change because they're going to lose all of their players. We're just going to go forward one more year and see how Aldershot get on now they've lost their play. As you can imagine, it wasn't pretty for Aldershot, finishing rock bottom of the Premier League, 13 points. Their team now looking very different from the team that they had with all of their superstars. They did actually go out and spend some money, so getting to the Premier League did generate them enough money to be able to spend some money. So I wonder if they might be able to establish themselves maybe at Championship level. They might even be able to put together a team that can come back up again. Who knows? And then these guys have just gone straight back into their original teams, and it's like they never left. They don't seem to have been harmed very much at all by being stuck in the lower leagues for all these years. They are still top level players. Saka actually playing far better for Arsenal than he ever did for Aldershot, presumably because Aldershot spent 5 years playing him as left wing back. Oh my word. They didn't know what they had. Let's check in on the other two as well. They've only had one more year. So I imagine they're still going to be in League One. In fact, if we just look at the League One table from last season, they've both finished mid-table, 9th and 10th. Right, we're going to go forward another 4 years now because that gets us to the 10-year point, which is the point when Fylde's money runs out. So they are going to need to... They're basically, wherever they are in 4 years is probably as far as they're going to get, because from there the money will start to dwindle. Altrincham, of course, in the long run, will continue to have a big stadium and fantastic facilities, although presumably they're not filling the stadium anymore, because that's often what happens. They are still filling the stadium. When I've done these in the past, attendances have started to dwindle. Their attendances are not dwindling. I think Altrincham are playing the long game here and are probably going to end up the winners. So we've got another 4 years forward. We're now 10 years in, and Aldershot are still a championship team. It looks like getting that 5 years of £1 billion worth of players has been enough for them to establish themselves at this level. And in fact, last season, finishing 3rd in the championship, missing out on promotion through the playoffs. And they are a fully functioning championship level team now that are actually spending more money, at least more money than when we last checked in on them, than the other two are. Have they gone out and got some facilities? Nope. They still. Oh, they are. In fact, there you go. They are going to be moving into a new stadium. They're looking for funding, but they have got future plans for an 18,000 capacity stadium, which they are going to need to take out a loan for. But they are looking to move into an appropriate ground. Aldershot, they only got 5 years of fancy players. It's now been 5 years since they left. They are still looking pretty healthy. Have the other two made it as far as the championship, or maybe even beyond? Fylde are also in the championship. It took them a couple more years to get out of League One, but they have now had one season in the championship. They're in the bottom half of it, and their money tap is now being turned off. They've got 157 million in the bank, but that's it. They ain't getting any more. Have they been spending it? Still very reluctantly, and I imagine they are still spending some absolutely insane amounts of money on salaries. Liam Delap still there on £130,000 a week. It's going to be interesting how much longer they can keep these kind of salaries going with the money tap being turned off, unless, of course, they make it to the Premier League, which seems fairly unlikely. And then Altrincham are also in the Championship, so they finished 8th last season. So it took them a little bit longer to get there, but they're looking in pretty good shape to be pushing on towards the Premier League. They've got more money in the bank now than money. Have they? Hold on. They haven't. That's 17. That's not 176. They don't have very much money in the bank at all. Their facilities are slowly starting to dwindle. But obviously they still have that big flow of money coming in from the massive stadium. They're also spending crazy money on players. Charlie Patino, £145,000 a week after signing him for £10.75 million. And they are, I guess there's not really any sign of them developing their own players with their fantastic facilities. I think they're still locked in that situation where when they bring a good player through, they immediately get sold, which is unfortunate. They need to establish themselves a little bit higher up, I guess, to stop that from happening. So the media prediction for the Championship this season, the highest prediction goes to Altrincham. Altrincham are the ones with the facilities. Next up is Aldershot, who had the players 5 years ago and have used that boost that season in the Premier League to establish themselves. And then Fylde, who had 10 years worth of just cash, are the worst off at the moment with a prediction of 17th place. As we are at the moment, though, 10 years in, all three of them mid-table-ish Championship clubs. So it seems that whatever way you give them £1 billion, getting £1 billion as a non-league club's quite handy. Let's go forward 5 more years. My expectation here, at least before we started, is that 5 more years, Altrincham are looking good and the other two are starting to fall back down. But Aldershot seem to be really holding their own, so they might prove me wrong here. So 5 more years. It's now 10 years since Aldershot lost their superstar players and they are still in the Championship. Not only are they still in the Championship, they went back up and had another season in the Premier League and did better the next time round. Nearly 10 years later, did better. They have then dropped back down to the Championship and finished mid-table again, but they are very much an established team at Championship level. They've got their fancy new Aldershot Stadium with the 19,000 capacity. They have invested money in improving their training facilities, their youth recruitment. Off the pitch, money-wise, they've got a decent chunk of cash in the bank, good budgets looking ahead to these seasons. And, I mean, those training facilities, they're as good as Altrincham's were the last time we checked in on them. Aldershot, I genuinely didn't think giving them, 8, 9 world-class players, but then taking them off them. There were no transfer fees when those players left. They literally effectively got a 5-year loan of a world-class team and have used it to set themselves up at Championship level. And they're basically West Brom. They'll flirt with the Premier League every now and again. I think Aldershot fans take that. Let's check in with the other two. So Fylde, who, of course, were given the money, had the money tap for a long time, but it was turned off, and they have kind of gone the other way. They were solid in the Championship for a little while, missed out on the Premier League through the playoffs, finished 3rd, and then just had a collapse, got relegated the next year, have come straight back up again, but last season they were down in League One. How are they looking financially? Their finances are not looking to, I mean, I guess 66 million in the bank and a massive, massive budgets. They're doing fine. They're not spending the crazy money they were spending before. They're still spending far too much money, but it looks like some of their more expensive, crazy expensive players have moved on. What happened to Liam Delap? Liam Delap is now at Swansea earning 16 grand as an emergency backup. Oh, I mean, he made his money during his Fylde years. He had a nice enough time there, but Fylde proving that just giving them cash is not as effective as giving them fancy players on 5-year loans, which is not an outcome I expected. Altrincham should be in the Premier League. Altrincham are in the Premier League, and I think this is probably how I expected it to turn out as well. If we have a look at how they got here, they were just gradually getting better in the Championship. Remember, they weren't given any money. They weren't given any fancy players, but they were given a massive stadium, great facilities, so they would make their own money and effectively make their own players. They had a few years of missing out in the Premier League through the playoffs, but they did get promoted in 2nd place this season, just gone, and they are now a Premier League football team. And if we have a look at their finances, they're not looking good. They're actually overdrawn. Their facilities, I mean, training facilities aren't actually as good as Aldershot's now, which is interesting. I don't really understand how they're overdrawn. Have they just spent a ton on players? Yeah, I guess they kind of have. They've spent a lot of money to get themselves promoted. They seem to have decided to just really go for it. I guess the Premier League money will start to flow in now. And I suspect they're going to have a better chance than any of the other recently promoted teams of actually staying there. But I think that's certainly Altrincham being the best is probably what I expected to happen. The big surprise for me is Aldershot. They've all done very well. But if you do want to juice your own team, I guess what we've established here is the best way to juice them. Facilities. Facilities and stadium, more effective than Erling Haaland or a big pile of cash. And that's kind of surprising. If you enjoyed that, please make sure you leave a nice big thumbs up on there for me. Let me know down in the comments below what other experiments you'd like to see here on the channel, or do you want to see me take this one further? If we hit 5,000 likes on the video, as I always say, I can release the file so you can continue simming it forward or take over managing one of these clubs or just mess around in the file if you want to. So that's there as a thing. If you want the thing, do the thing. The thumbs up. Subscribe if you're new. And thank you very much for watching.